Oh. Hey, what's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today we are doing the what's next on Robson Conceicao, the former three-time world title challenger, following a stay busy win over a fighter named Jose Guardado, in which Conceicao came out and was really firing and made it an action-packed fight. And we'll get into that in a minute, but a good, strong, I think it was an 7th or 8th round knockout victory on body shots as he bounces back from the fight with Emmanuel Navarrete. Now, before we get into that, if you could smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel, I really do appreciate any and all support that I can get as I continue to build my channel here. So, Conceicao, this was a good stay busy fight in which, a lot of people tuned in. He was on a good card on the Anderson and Merhi undercard with a Jagba in the co-feature, and he just stayed busy, went out there, did his job, in action-packed, and that's what made this one exciting. When he fought Oscar Valdez and boxed him and seemingly won the fight, the thing is there was guys that would stay away from him because you weren't sure what you were going to get with him, and he seemed like the consummate boxer. And so he seemed like he had the style to make you look bad. Then he goes out against Shakur Stevenson and loses a one-sided fight. But then I was surprised that he would get the opportunity against Navarrete last November. But I think Navarrete just wanted, I think he was viewing Conceicao as a stay busy opponent. And that was a mistake because Conceicao went out there and out-threw Emmanuel Navarrete impressively. And, got out of there with a draw after taking a couple knockdowns, but he fought his ass off, and there's some that thought he won the fight. I mean, you could definitely argue that he deserved to win that fight against Navarrete. So to bounce back from that, especially after not getting a rematch with Navarrete after that fight was ruled a draw, he had something to prove, and he dominated this Guardado guy, and, left no, just proved that, hey, I'm still banging around and I'm still good. So he's currently the WBC's #2 ranked contender. So now, moving forward, what's next for Robson Conceicao following that win? Well, it's the WBC, it's going to be up to what they decide they are going to do. If they're going to order Yakubov to fight Oshaki Foster next, or if Oshaki Foster is going to be allowed to make another optional defense, because his last mandatory was against Rocky Hernandez back in October. Then he was granted an optional defense against Abraham Supernova in February, in which he got out of there with a very close split decision. Will the WBC mandate Yakubov next? WBC is generally pretty open, but also Foster could fight Oscar Valdez next in a unification bout. So a lot of it centers around that right there. Let's run through the top 10 and see what else is possible, though. We start with Emmanuel Navarrete, the reigning WBO champion, which would be a rematch for Conceicao. Is this a possibility? I'm leaning towards a no. First, Navarrete is moving up to lightweight and challenging Dennis Berinchyk for the vacant WBO lightweight title. Most people feel Navarrete is going to win that fight. If he does and becomes a 4-division world champion, he's going to be giving up his WBO title at 130, and he won't return. Now, would Conceicao consider moving up to lightweight to fight him? Maybe, but it's also the likelihood that Navarrete and Vasily Lomachenko would unify belts later in the year. So, a lot of moving pieces, but I wish a rematch would happen. I think Conceicao deserves it, but it's not going to happen next, in my opinion. Now, if Navarrete were to lose, would he come back down and fight Conceicao? Not likely. If he loses that fight to Berinchyk, but stays champion at 130, I doubt he comes back down after a loss and wants to fight a guy that fought him to a draw in his first defense. So I don't think so. Then there's Joe Cordina, the reigning undefeated IBF champion. They're with different promotions. Cordina, after his optional defense against Anthony Cacace, is supposed to make a mandatory defense against Eduardo Nunez. So I don't think that Conceicao and Cordina, that there's going to be a draw or an interest for that fight, and I don't think it's possible anyways, because of mandatories. Then there's Oshaki Foster, the reigning WBC champion. This one's interesting right here. I don't think it's going to happen, but there is a possibility, and I'll tell you why. The WBC, if they grant Oshaki Foster the opportunity to not make a mandatory next, so whatever he wants to do, if he decides to unify with Oscar Valdez, obviously a fight with Conceicao is not on the table. But what if Navarrete loses to Barianchek in May, comes back down, and decides he wants to unify belts against Oscar Valdez in a rematch? Who would be his mandatory challenger, because he's the WBO interim champion. Then that means Oshaki Foster is SOL on a showdown with Valdez to unify belts. So Oshaki Foster and Robson Conceicao are both with Top Rank. The fight could be made then between the two, if the WBC allows another optional defense for Foster, which I wouldn't completely rule that out of a possibility. So I think Navarrete is going to win and stay at 135, and then Valdez gets upgraded, and then you're likely going to see Foster and Valdez fight to unify belts. But I do think there's an outside chance that if Navarrete loses, Navarrete comes back down, defends against Oscar Valdez in a rematch, and then that opens the door for Foster and Conceicao. So we'll see. Next up is Shavkat Rakhimov, the former IBF champion. One, he's with DAZN and Matchroom, and two, he's also coming off of back-to-back losses. I don't think the two sides cross the street with each other to make a fight like this, so I'm going to say no. Then there's WBA champion Lamont Roach Jr. Lamont Roach has not yet decided on a promotional company to promote him, but I heard he has 2 mandatories due before he can do anything he wants. So I don't see him and Conceicao being a fight on the table. Then there's former WBA champion Hector Luis Garcia. He's coming off back-to-back losses as well, and he's also a PBC guy, so I don't see him and Conceicao coming to the table with each other. Then there's a rematch with Oscar Valdez, who's now the WBO interim champion. Not likely, although the possibility is there. It's an easy fight to make because they're both with Top Rank. But Conceicao, but Valdez would have to would have to get upgraded to WBO champion and then avoid a unification bout with Foster. That's a more attractive fight. Plus, if Navarrete were to lose at 135, he comes down and probably fights Valdez. So, and honestly, I think Valdez, unless he absolutely has to or until he's a unified champ, I don't think he wants anything to do with Conceicao in a rematch. So that's just me personally. Then you got Mark Magsayo. He's a PBC guy or works with the PBC. I don't see this one being possible. Edward Vasquez, former world title challenger. I think he's a DAZN and Matchroom guy. I think, or he's with Golden Boy. Would be an interesting bout, but I don't think the two sides get together. Then running through some guys that are technically outside of the top 10, but high contenders. Zelfa Barrett, he's coming off of a win. I would love to see the fight, but it's Matchroom working with Top Rank. I don't see them coming together for that one. Jordan Gill, also with Matchroom, coming off of a loss. Don't see them coming together. Rocky Hernandez is with Golden Boy. He has another fight coming up here soon. And then I do think, though, that this fight could be possible later in the year in some kind of like a final eliminator, especially if Yakubov, the #1 ranked contender, gets upgraded. I could see, because Rocky Hernandez is #3 in the WBC. He had a hell of a fight with Foster last year, and Conceicao is #2. Then there's Lee Wood, the former featherweight champ. I don't see it. He's with Matchroom and DAZN, and he's moving up to 130, likely getting a rematch with Josh Warrington next, so I don't see him and Conceicao working out a fight. Liam Wilson's coming off of a loss. He has worked with Top Rank twice now in the last year or so. I think the potential is there for a fight like this, but I don't know if Wilson, coming off of two knockout losses in his last 3 fights, if he's going to want to fight Conceicao, but he might want to get back into it and fight a guy like Conceicao, because it probably would be an easy fight to make. Then you got Muhammad Yakubov, who's the WBC's #1 ranked contender. if the WBC decides they want to order a mandatory fight, then I think this fight is absolutely possible. You know, the WBC is kind of, you know, it has a wiggle room area with their fighters and mandatories and stuff like that. So considering their last mandatory was just in October, I think they might give Foster a little bit more time and maybe make Conceicao and Yakubov earn it by fighting each other. Then there's Otar Oranazian. He's the WBA's #1 ranked contender. I don't see him risking that. I think he's actually next in line or second in line to fight Lamont Roach for the WBA belt. Then you got Albert Bell. He's the WBO's #1 ranked contender. I don't think he would risk that to fight Conceicao unless the WBO ordered him to mandate his position by fighting a guy like Conceicao, because that would work for Conceicao as well. He gets a crack at becoming mandatory, and then he would be in line for also a rematch with either Navarrete if he loses, or Valdez, or Foster if Foster becomes the unified champ. And those are all easily made fights. So I do think this one's a possibility. Then there's Joan O'Carroll. I don't see that one. He's a Matchroom guy, I believe. And then some other guys. You got, these guys are all, you know, you got Kenichi Ogawa's with Matchroom. Eduardo Nunez is the IBS mandatory challenger, so I don't see that. Archie Sharp is the WBO's #3 contender. This one would be interesting, maybe. And then then you got Chevalier is the WBO's #4 contender. So Robson Conceicao, I think, is going to have some good options. He's got to wait to see what happens with the Navarrete Barianchek fight. And then he can go from there. But I do believe there's a chance of like a guy like Liam Wilson or an Albert Bell. And there might be some other guys that might draw some interest in the top 10. But he also might just have to stay busy in the next one and potentially wait around for the prospective winner of Shaki Foster and Oscar Valdez if they fight in a unification bout, which I think is very likely next. So we'll see what happens, but I think good things are coming for the for Robson Conceicao. I honestly see either a mandatory shot with either Muhammad Yakubov in the WBC or Albert Bell in the WBO, or I think there's a chance he gets a crack at Oshaki Foster for the WBC title as well. So we'll see what happens, but that's it. That's what I got. That's my what's next on former 3-time world title challenger, the always tough Robson Conceicao of Brazil. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. I appreciate any and all support. This is True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.